Now we look up as we try to understand the human impact and environmental change of the Earth's atmosphere. Here we see a city in South America that definitely you can see the air pollution quite clearly. And so the air pollution, just essentially dirty air, is that a relatively new thing? No. We go back to the first agricultural revolution as people moved to settlements, even up to more recent times, the Roman Empire. There about 2,000 plus years ago, they were complaining and moaning about the dirty air in their cities. Back then, of course, that was from smoke from fires and open sewers and various fumes from businesses. But today, we can really see this going global. And so we can see across the world people dealing with air pollution, particularly in their cities. We look at air pollution, it's more of a urban issue. We don't see it in large numbers in rural areas. Not saying rural pollution doesn't exist out there, but of course it relates to where we have large clusters of people. So starting back with the Industrial Revolution, when we start to see that mass rural to urban migration occur in our developed countries, back then in the 1850s, is the origins, you could say, of seeing these large-scale air pollution across the world. And this is, increasingly an issue as, of course, in 2007 was the first time in human history we had more people living in cities. And that is a pattern that's not going to slow down. And so this is going to be increasingly a concern. So tying it back into other things we've already discussed throughout this semester. And we call this hazy sky with reduced sunlight that we find in urban areas. It's created from anthropogenic sources. We call it smog. And so historically it was coal burning, which was the main culprit for the smog that we found in our cities, especially there during the Industrial Revolution soon after. But today, cars are the main culprit. And so we see automobiles increasingly being used across the world. So it's becoming more accessible, more affordable, but you also have car companies marketing themselves all throughout the world trying to increase production and increase consumption of vehicles. And so what that does is it produces more carbon monoxide. And of course, when we look at our urban areas, we see the clusters of large numbers of people, but also clusters of a large number of cars. And so what that's doing is it's increasing the smog that we find in our urban areas. Also important to understanding smog in urban areas, though, is industrial sources. And so we could say it's probably a co-culprit for a lot of the air pollution we see. But once again, this is going to be something we're going to see in more affluent areas or those newly industrializing countries of the world. And so this makes sense that this is going to be something that you're going to see in more affluent countries because they're going to first off possess the opportunity and the ability for industry. But of course, industrialization is globalizing, so it's something that's spreading across the world. So you could also say that one of the things that's happening in the United States is deindustrialization, so the actual improvement in air pollution and air quality as a lot of these industries are no longer. And this is something that's been observed, and so we've seen decreases in sulfur oxides, or essentially acid rain, in the Rust Belt in the northeast part of the United States as deindustrialization has lessened the amount of chemicals that are being added to the atmosphere. But of course in China we see a lot of industrialization, but even more so you see an increasing amount of car usage. They're actually building their fourth or fifth 465, their fourth or fifth ring road in Beijing, the capital of China. That just gives you an indication as far as how much the transportation infrastructure is, having to build out to satisfy the demand for more and more people driving cars and thus subsequently living farther away from workplaces. All those things that we experience here in the United States. And this received a lot of publicity during the 2008 Beijing Olympics, when a lot of the events essentially showcase the fact that, in Beijing, you got an air pollution problem. And so this is something that is kind of one of those deals where you get the Olympics, you get to show the rest of the world what a communist country looks like from the inside. But at the same time, you get to show off that you've got some major problems. Also important when we look at our atmosphere is the role of chlorofluorocarbons. Essentially, the simple way to say it, CFCs. And we find these in aerosol cans, but we also find them in refrigerators and air conditioners. We think about effluents. We think about technology. As places become more affluent, as they gain more technology, they're more likely to then buy an aerosol can and use it to make sure a place smells good, to make sure a place is nice and sterilized and clean and all that good stuff. Where, you look at a lot of lower income areas of the world, for example, South Asia or maybe Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, they're not buying aerosol cans. They're not using aerosol cans. And so you could say this is kind of an affluent situation here. But what's happening is across the world, more people are becoming affluent. Further, we look at refrigerators and air conditioners. Why are those important? Of course, those are things that cool you down. We've had those throughout, a long time here in the United States. But where's world population growing the fastest right now? It's growing the fastest in tropical areas, warm, hot areas, where there's also increasing affluence. And so as people gain more wealth, more disposable income, more extra cash, they buy things that previously were luxury items, but refrigerators and air conditioners are increasingly being used. And so all these factors combined means we're adding more chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, to the atmosphere. Why does that matter? Because what's happening is CFCs are critical to understanding the shrinking of the ozone layer, or you could say a widening or an increasingly larger size of the hole in the ozone layer. Why is the ozone layer important? The ozone layer does a good job of acting as a defender, blocking off a lot of those ultraviolet rays from the sun. Those ones that mom and dad tell you, make sure you wear sunblock. You don't want those UV rays burning and hurting your skin. So why do you apply sunblock? Is essentially to act as your own ozone layer. That's sunblock is blocking the UV rays that still filter through our atmosphere. And so what's happening over time, this gap, this hole, is essentially getting bigger and allowing more UV rays to come through the atmosphere. Once again, the ozone layer, its function is to block, to defend. It's now no longer there. It's allowing these UV rays to come and actually hit the surface. And so you're seeing higher rates of skin cancer. So we think about, human consequences, and that's definitely a human consequence. But also what's happening is this is a view of the Antarctic. So here we have a big ice sheet. So more solar energy, more UV rays coming down and hitting an ice sheet only makes sense. It's going to then cause more melting.